accounts, when they because they keep on making you put them articles out because you at the lowest level of the power structure. Is that why you so mad, Ari Emanuel? Oh, what? Oh, how does the power structure run? Okay, we got China headed to be potentially, if it's not for Jesus Christ, the New World Order, the New America. But previous to that, we do have Christian ran families, the Medici, 1,000-year-old families. They sit above the Vatican. The Vatican sits above the financial groups, BlackRock and Vanguard. Vanguard sits above Putin, Kim Jong-un, Biden. And you know who's under all of them? Ari Emanuel, Hollywood. It is the first line of defense for the CIA for mind control. Come and get me.
So, okay, my other question for you is, what do you mean when you
Now,
say,
you understand? I said, come and get me. What I just said is far past anything anybody in my position has ever said publicly. You understand that? So we just riding on God at this point. I ain't got no security. Y'all know exactly where I'm at.
All right, so I'm going to outline what Ye was just talking about. He just kind of outlined a power structure, like how things actually work in the real world, that actually logically makes sense. And let me go into why. So, historically speaking, the Medici family actually did own the Vatican. We can see here in this PBS.org article that talks about it, saying the Pope himself had a massive overdraft in the Medici Bank, and the Medici Bank became the most profitable business in Europe. The papal connections gave the Medici Bank immense power. Soon everyone wanted an account with the Pope's personal bank. On one occasion, the nomination of a new bishop was delayed until his father, a cardinal, had repaid their debts to the Medici Bank. So it's pretty obvious here that a royal family owned the Catholic Church during a time when, the Catholic Church just ruled everything. They were thought to be the top, like, Pumbaa, but in reality it was this royal family that owned the bank that the Catholic Church used. So historically that's made sense, but like, how does that work in our modern era? Because according to, research on the internet, the last male heir of the Medicis died in the 1700s. So to me, it seems like there's just an amount, but however, there's tens of thousands of Medici still alive today. But that's just the official narrative that, that they rose to power and then fell and they're no longer so powerful. Who knows if that's true? But either way, there are countless royal and wealthy families today that hold a lot of power. And I'm going to go into how they're able to do that in the modern era, because things are a little bit different now, of course, than they were back then. This is a really good YouTube video, actually, on how these power structures work. We're going to first start off looking at all these major corporations in the United States and how they're actually owned by very few investment firms, and it actually turns into a pyramid-like structure. So we're going to watch like 8 minutes of this video, which is extremely important. Please watch this.
Telephone companies, restaurant chains, and cosmetic brands are owned by the same institutional investors we just saw.
Yeah, all these companies, they're owned by these investment companies here.
Institutional investors own each other's shares, and together they form an immense network that we can compare to a pyramid. The smaller institutional investors are owned by larger investors, who in turn belong to even larger investors. The visible top of this pyramid consists of only two companies, and we've seen their names many times by now. They are Vanguard and BlackRock. The power of these two companies is something we can barely imagine. Not only are they the largest institutional investors of every major company on Earth, they also own the other institutional investors of those companies, giving them a complete monopoly. According to a report by Bloomberg, one of the most respected institutions in the world in the field of financial data and analytics, experts expect that by 2028, both companies will collectively manage about $20 trillion in investments, and in the process will own almost everything on Earth. The same Bloomberg called BlackRock the fourth arm of government, because it is the only non-government entity
Guys,
that has a close
the
relationship
fourth
with the
arm
royal
of
banks,
government.
also called
That again makes sense with Ye's power structure. Again, the royal families, the Vatican, Vanguard and BlackRock, governments to Putin to Biden to Ari Emanuel, Hollywood, and the media. Again, BlackRock, Vanguard are considered the fourth branch of our government.
all the central banks. BlackRock not only lends money to the federal banks, but is also their principal advisor and the developer of the computer system that the federal banks use. Dozens of BlackRock employees had senior positions in the White House during the Bush and the Obama administrations, and currently under Joe Biden. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink is a welcome guest with many heads of state and politicians, and understandably so. He's the face of the company that pulls the strings. Yet Larry Fink does not pull the strings himself. In fact, BlackRock itself is owned by shareholders. And if we look at who those shareholders are, we come to a strange conclusion. You see that BlackRock's largest shareholder is Vanguard, and this is where it gets dark. Vanguard itself has a unique structure that makes it impossible to see who its shareholders or clients are. The elite who own Vanguard don't want anyone to know that they are the owners of the most powerful company on earth. But
So Vanguard is even more powerful than BlackRock.
of course, this is no secret to those who are willing to look into it. Reports by Oxfam and Bloomberg show that 1% of the world's population collectively owns more money than the other 99%. Indeed, Oxfam claims that as much as 82% of all the money earned in 2017 went to this 1% of people. Naturally, those who own the most powerful company on earth would also be the richest among this 1%. In other words, they are part of the 0.001%. Forbes, the most well-known business magazine in the world, claims that by March 2020, there were some 2,075 billionaires. Oxfam's report showed that 2/3 of all these billionaires obtained their fortune through inheritances and monopolies.
I think it's important to note that Ye was a billionaire before he started speaking out like this. And he was a part of that very small percentage of billionaires who didn't get there from inheritance or monopoly. So he was in these circles, which gives him the credibility to actually speak how the power structures work in the world if he was one of the billionaires.
So this means that Vanguard is in the hands of the richest families on earth. If we study their history, we discover that these families have always belonged to the top of the pyramid, some even well before the Industrial Revolution began. Because their history is so interesting and extensive, I will explain some more about them in the follow-up video that I'm currently working on. But in order not to elaborate too far, I will just point out that many of these families belong to royal bloodlines, and they are the founders of our banking system, the United Nations, and every industry in the world.
Yeah, they started these banking systems. Here we go, the royal bloodlines here.
These families never lost their power, but because of an increasing world population, they were forced to hide behind investment companies such as Vanguard, whose largest shareholders are the private funds and non-profit organizations of these families. To make the bigger picture more clear, I need to briefly explain something about these non-profit organizations. These are the links that connect the business community with politics and the media, allowing major conflicts of interest. At first glance, however, this is not too noticeable. Non-profits, also called foundations, are organizations that rely on donations, and they do not have to publish from whom they receive those donations.
This is important.
They can invest this money whatever they want, and do not have to pay tax on their profits as long as those profits are reinvested in other projects that they are involved in. Non-profits can move hundreds of billions of dollars from invisible investors. According to a report by the Australian government, this makes non-profit organizations ideal to finance terrorist groups and launder large sums of money.
Here's the Australian report right here.
The foundations and funds of the families who are highest in the hierarchy of the 1% hide behind the scenes as much as possible. However, for cases that have a lot of publicity and attention, they use the foundations of philanthropist families that are lower in the ranking, but who are also extremely wealthy. In order to be concise, I will only highlight the 3 most important foundations in the world that connect all the industries in the world to each other. These are the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Open Society Foundations of the controversial multi-billionaire George Soros, and the Clinton Foundation. A very brief introduction.
So Yeah, I think you guys followed along pretty well with what was going on there. So these nonprofit organizations, they're able to hide the amount of money they have. They're able to hide the people that invest in them, and they're able to move around hundreds of billions of dollars to do whatever they want. And every single major family has their own nonprofit, from the Rockefellers to the Rothschilds to the Gates. And Bill and Melinda Gates, they're actually the ones who fund the World Health Organization, which I have an article over somewhere. Yeah, right here. So Donald Trump, one of the first things he did was he stopped the United States funding to the World Health Organization. So instead of being funded by the government, it's funded by Bill Gates. And he also has a close relationship with 16 of the most influential pharmaceutical companies. And of course, all their shareholders are BlackRock and Vanguard. And BlackRock and Vanguard, they're also the shareholders of all the major 6 media conglomerates that own 90% of media, from GE to News Corp to Disney. If you look at their shareholders, again, BlackRock, Vanguard. And this makes sense with the power structure, again, that Ye was outlining. And as a billionaire, he's actually able to speak on this. So again, the power structure is these royal and wealthy families, they control things through nonprofits. And now the question is, where does the Vatican come in? Well, the Vatican is the largest nonprofit in the world. Go ahead and Google, does the Vatican have a nonprofit organization? The first answer that comes up here is, with its surpluses devoted entirely to religion and charity, it may well be the largest nonprofit bank in the world, and it is certainly the most secretive. So as outlined in this video, we now have a good idea of just how powerful a nonprofit organization can be. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to share my screen there. So this is here on Google here when you Google this information, and that pops up. So yeah, back to the list here. So Vanguard and BlackRock, these royal families, hide behind these investment firms, which actually own pretty much all the major corporations. And another thing I want to highlight to really drive the point home how powerful BlackRock is, the president of the company, Larry Fink, he has something called an ESG score. ESG stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. He gives subsidies to companies that put rainbow flag logos, who support BLM, who outwardly support like really lefty progressive causes. That's why we see all these corporations going woke and going broke, because they're not actually going broke. Sure, they will lose profits from their customers who are sick of hearing this agenda, but they're gaining all this money from BlackRock's ESG subsidies. That's why we see it everywhere. So again, this really drives home how they just really control everything. So if we look on our list again here, the government. So how is Vanguard and BlackRock and these royal families, how are they above the governments of the world, from Putin to Biden? Well, of course, we can look up online and see, who are the biggest organization donors to the Republicans and Democrats in the United States. And we get these lists of hedge funds and nonprofit organizations that donate to the blue here is the Democrats and the red here is the Republicans. So this really maps out this idea of both the Republicans and the Democrats are bought and paid for. The way that government works in this country and across many countries is these companies give our government money and then they have influence in government policies. So that, again, makes logical sense with Ye's power structure that he laid out for us. And, Ari Emanuel, he's arguably the most powerful person in Hollywood. And again, the media, those 6 main media conglomerates, they are owned by Vanguard and BlackRock. They are the #1 investors of all those media companies in Hollywood and everything. So, yeah. What Ye was saying made a lot of sense. Right here, I got the Wikipedia article up for the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers are a very powerful family, and they are a group that is well known for giving a lot of money to Republicans. And I just thought that they were a great example of how these wealthy families have more power than the government even itself. It's able to sway things. I think that's everything I wanted to go over. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a better idea of what Ye was talking about. Oh yeah, I meant to share my screen again. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a better idea of what Ye was talking about. It all definitely makes sense. Yeah, so I think one thing we need to remember is, or just one thing to think about is maybe he didn't really mean the Medici family like owns everything. I think he was just giving them as an example of one of the multiple royal families, because he said plural, that really control things in the world. So he wasn't kidding when he said, when he was alluding to the fact that his safety is a concern right now. He's dropped some major truth bombs for someone in his position. And that's why I think it's logical to support this man if he wants to influence politics. I mean, he's the only one really breaking through and speaking the truth. People were applauding Donald Trump when he's like, yeah, we need to secure our borders. People are like, woohoo, yippee. But like the comparative truth bombs to what Ye is saying compared to that is like astronomical. Like he's getting to literally the heart of the issues. Because through research, and Ye talks about this further, how it seems like the United States is being gutted because we are no longer going to be the world superpower. That's being given over to China through the New World Order. So I think he goes further into that in this interview. Oh, come on. Sorry, I'm trying to play it here. Hold on.
What lines?
I think we were over here.
Oh, how does the power structure run? Okay, we got China headed to be potentially, if it's not for Jesus Christ, the New World Order, the New America. But previous to that, we do have Christian ran families, the Medici, 1,000-year-old families.
Notice how he doesn't even put Jewish people at the top of his power structure. Like that isn't the main point of any of his messages.
And Vanguard. Vanguard sits above Putin, Kim Jong-un, Biden. And you know who's under all of them? Ari Emanuel, Hollywood. It is the first line of defense for the CIA for mind control. Come and get me.
Okay, my other question for you is, what do you mean when you
Now,
say...
you understand? I said, come and get me. What I just said is far past anything anybody in my position has ever said publicly. You understand that? So we just riding on God at this point. I ain't got no security. Y'all know exactly where I'm at.
That I said I have a God on your side. I appreciate you.
He ain't lying about that. Drive me crazy.
Yeah. God got us because it's that time, because they seeing it, right? They seeing it and they doing it every.
That was weird. But when you become president, what would be some of the executive orders that you'll implement effective immediately?
I think we start by ending the most favored nation with China because of the coronavirus and fentanyl. China is shipping fentanyl into the U.S. That's one of our biggest crises, and that's a part of China's takeover of the U.S., hitting us every way possible. See, I know people point towards China all the time. They lost the Industrial Revolution, and they actually have books about how they have 100-year plan to become the New World Order, and that's the ability to print the money. That means that we will follow China, that they will be the most influential nation. Right now, America is the most influential nation, but you have companies like Comcast that run everything, and they use the Jews, they use celebrities, they use Disney, Hulu, they use magazines, they use all of that to control a lot of the messaging, to push us, to excite us, to get us just talking back and forth. Meanwhile, all of our industries have been completely shattered, and the places where we used to have steel factories throughout middle America have now gone away, and we have opioid crises instead. So we're going to start right there. Defund all federally funded abortions. More Black people are aborted than born at this point in New York City. That's 2022. Also, the number one cause of death for Black people is abortion by far, over anything you could think of, over any type of crime, heart disease, drugs, police, all of these things. Suspend all foreign aid. We have to focus on our country. You know, we are the inventors. We invented, you know, Ford, Apple, Disney, McDonald's, you know, just America. America's the youngest startup in history. So, you know, when I hear the inventors, the amazing minds coming out of these colleges, the people who know how to create energy from tires, alternative energy sources, like Tesla said, the earth is a giant generator. And then Commonwealth Edison basically started electrocuting animals in the street. And then Tesla died without a penny trying to sell a nuclear bomb. But the information that he had would have freed us all. So I always say, like, what if Tesla, you know, had an Instagram? How much more free would our people be right now? Then you got the original BLM. It's not Black Lives Matter. It's Bureau of Land Development. I know about that because I got over 13,000 acres in America. I got 300 acres in Calabasas. I got property in Malibu. I've got over 12,000 acres in Wyoming, multiple properties, and it is very difficult to build. So that forces us into TikTok, into Second Life, into an alternative version of the real world. And the real world is the real video game. That's on earth. It shall be on earth as it is in heaven, like we pray. But if we've got the Bureau of Land Development blocking developers, and that's not even me, it's like a celebrity, you know, coming from music, attempting to build homeless shelters and cities of the future. I'm talking about straight up good old boys, like Catholics, you know, that can't even build in America right now. So those are some of the main ones.